Just want to start off with a question this morning, which is, I wonder how many people are in school in some capacity around the room, or like me, work in education? Just show of hands. Who around the room? There's a few, yeah, it's quite a few of us. Okay. You then are on the verge of that fantastic feeling, which is the summer holidays. Well done, you've made it. If you're a parent, you might be less enthused though, thinking, how am I going to entertain them for 6 weeks? And so today, in our Against the Flow series, just want to touch on education and look at raising the next generation. And so as part of the talk, I've asked a few friends from King's, Rachel and Karen, to come up and share as part of the talk. Now, in order though, to win some of you back, maybe school was a long distant memory. None of us though arrived at adulthood, did we? Like this. There was a path, there was a process we went on to get there. And so whether you went to your local comprehensive, whether you were at private school, or whether you were homeschooled, I wonder what you remember about education. There's a couple of examples on the board there. Do you remember scampering on upside-down gym benches? Maybe you remember playing bulldog in the playgrounds. You can't call it that anymore, so I still play it. I just call it a different name. Or maybe it was Bunsen burners in science, or your sports day. Or maybe it was that moment when you received your handwriting pen license. A few of you will remember that. Some of you might know I work in a specialist school, and it's for pupils who have found mainstream school just a bit more difficult for them. And so they're not likely to attain the same grades as you might expect the average pupil to achieve. And so often I find myself wondering then, what is the purpose of education? Is it to achieve GCSEs and A-levels? If so, where should I be putting my efforts then? A phrase I often hear is actually, why are we learning this? What is the point of this? What good is this going to do me in the future? And I think sometimes kids have a point. For example, when I go for a meal with my family, I don't sit there with my slice of pizza wondering, is it cut as an obtuse triangle? Is it equilateral? What kind of triangle is it? As you can see behind me, if you weren't sure, it is an isosceles triangle, a perfect cut of pizza. And I did okay at school. Came out with some B's and C's, and that's old school money for grade 5s and 6s for those of you in school at the moment. But when I left school to go to university at 19, I reflected actually there was a lot I didn't know. I knew some numeracy, but I didn't really know how to budget for myself. I knew how to get on with people, to have some conversations, but I didn't know how to be vulnerable or maybe share or walk into conflict conversations. I knew about relationships, but nobody taught me how to care for a woman's heart. Consider that. Were you guided, or did you just have to kind of make it up as you went along? Did you leave school and leave home knowing everything you needed to know? I'm not knocking school, particularly as when I reflect, I realize I've never actually left school or education. So clearly then, we'd all agree, education is important. It prepares people, young people for life. It plays an essential role then in keeping school people safe. And then home and school are the two probably most important places in the lives of a child. It has a huge effect on your life chances, the kind of job you'll get in the future, okay? Your opportunities in life. And it's a good opportunity to escape if you come from a more deprived background. It's just that education is swept up in these cultural climates that we swim in. Schools are judged by exam results, and we are familiar with some of the pressures and the news headlines that can result of that. At the end of primary school, pupils take their GCSEs or their SATs, so I'm being distracted because it's a bit early there, Simon, please. And I remember going back to primary school, my daughter in her last year was complaining at the approaching SATs. It felt like the drama group was cancelled, the sports events were cancelled because of the pressure building up to these exams. The year was becoming less and less joyful and more like hard work. And like many primary age parents then, I also remember trying to do my children's homework and trying to explain to them what a preposition is, or maybe a conjunction or a subordinate clause. I still can't explain them, and I'm in education. And so society around us rewards the shiny, the clever. The world's view of success is up and to the right. Is this God's definition, though, of success? Some children, though, do find ways to embrace their creativity. This is where the slide was going to come up here. I like it when pupils do this in exams. In which battle did Napoleon die? His last one, of course. Where was the Declaration of Independence signed? At the bottom of the page. The River Ravi flows in which state? Liquid states. And sadly, number 4, what is the main reason for divorce? It's marriage. There you go. Very creative. An F but an A+ for creativity. If you've got children before school, got my full respect to you. It's beautiful, but it's hard work, isn't it? But when they're young, though, to a certain extent, you control their world. You control what they'll eat, where they're going to go, their diaries. What Christy and I found, though, was that as soon as they got into the school system, they were hit by an avalanche of secondary school and culture and mobile phones and all the rest of it. Childhood is really formative for all of us. And sadly, for some people, it's been said that childhood can be what you spend the rest of your life trying to overcome. Fortunately, in Jesus, we can be full of hope that God restores us. There's a path and a process that He's ordained for His people to follow. And the Bible encourages education as a path to wisdom and understanding. Well-known people in the Old Testament, like Moses, Daniel, and Solomon, they were educated and they were wise. The Apostle Paul was able to argue and convince the Greek philosophers of the day by pointing to the truth of the gospel. And let's not forget, Jesus was a carpenter's son. He would have had understanding of maths and numeracy and literacy for that. So the Bible is full of references to learning and the value of wisdom. And I want to focus on a short but central verse this morning to illustrate that. Got your Bibles, you might want to turn to Proverbs 22, verse 6. It says, "Train up a child in the way he should go, and even when he is old, he will not depart from it." So to train up and to teach is to recognize that children need guidance. There's so much to learn. How many mistakes, looking back, have we all made in our childhood? Scientists recognize that actually it takes over 20 years for our brains to mature. If you're a lady, it's supposed to be 21. If you're a guy, it's a little bit older. Apparently it's 25. And if you remember, Jez touched on this a few weeks ago with his Against the Flow series on raising boys. He talked about how we need to be intentional about how we raise our sons. But this verse emphasizes the need to go beyond merely teaching children academic information. It's not just about putting facts and figures and learning and repetition into our children. It's about character formation. This is not hands-off parenting. This is not remote learning, but it's a holistic approach to raising the next generation. This summer, one of our daughters will open up her GCSE results and be, hoping she gets the grades she needs to go to college. But actually, more than her achieving good grades, what I want her to know is that she is a daughter of God. That he has a plan and a purpose for her life, and actually his way is the best way to follow. It's not to say exams aren't important. They are the currency of the world. It's just there's a balance to be struck. So if you work in education in any capacity, there's a very real tension, though, in the day-to-day job. We're so busy, it can be a struggle to invest in those we work with. And parenting can also be a real challenge. And so we want to look at some practical ways of how we can parent our sons and daughters well. And so I'm going to invite Rachel just to come up and share a few thoughts. Her and Trevor have raised 2 sons. They're here today. But she's also a teacher at a local school, so she's got a real insight into some of the challenges facing our young people. So let's give her a round of applause as she comes up.
Okay, so yes, as Ben kindly said, I'm married to Trev. We've been in this church, it's been our home for 27 years, which is a bit like, whoa. And we have raised 2 boys who have both left home. I'm going to talk about 3 ways that we can build up our children within the education system and how we can help and support them. Point number 1 is that we need to equip our children. And if you are here this morning and you have brought your children with you, tick. Well done, okay? You are already there. We need to get our children stuck into church. Church is the best place for them. They need to learn how to manage their faith, how to manage school. School is a tough place. There are some difficult people there. There are unpleasant experiences. And we want our children to be able to conquer that and to survive that. Within Eastbourne, there's about 20,000 children, so 0 to 17. That's about 1/5 of our population. And Jesus talks about, us being the salt and the light, and that's our children amongst this age group. Now, fear not about my notes. I wear reading glasses, and I'm too proud to wear them sometimes, so my print is big. If you're here and you've brought your kids here, fabulous. It's made such a difference in the lives of our children. We are so grateful to those of you that have served and blessed our children. And whether that's Sunday mornings, Thursday nights, New Day, all of those things, they have built friendships with adults and with their peers and those younger than them, and it's just been vital. Obviously, there is a price to pay for that for us. Okay, you are the ones who have to take them. You have to pick them up. You have to pick up their friends. You have to go out when it's dark, when it's wet, when it's horrible. And then you have the challenge of what they want when they want to do something that is more exciting. That's a real difficult one. But actually, getting your kids so their faith is firm is crucial and is the thing that is going to see them through their school life. And then obviously, if you don't have children, you are absolutely crucial in this. We are a family, okay? Families, we rely on one another. We rely on each other for support, okay? All of you can get stuck into kids' work, youth work, small people work. Speak to our youth leaders, our kids leaders. They will have something that you can do. Don't ever discount yourself. You are all part of this family. Okay, point number 2 is very simple, and it is to pray. Prayer has done amazing things. If you look back in history, the Welsh revival, if we went to Berlin a few months ago, the Berlin Wall came down. People prayed and prayed and prayed, and amazing things happened. So I would encourage you to pray for the schools in our town, the schools that you walk past, the schools that your kids go to, your grandchildren, your neighbours' kids, and pray for the staff. As Ben said, it's exhausting. I finished on Friday. If you didn't, I'm very sorry about that. But yeah, teachers, all support staff are exhausted. They give everything every day. And as we break for summer, that's fabulous. But we all know in the back of our minds, get to September, we have an 8-week term to a half term, which is not an exciting thought. We can also pray for our church children, for boldness to speak to their friends about Jesus, for the courage to stand up actually for what is right in God's eyes, and to have compassion for those people that are different to them. And let's just think about it, especially if your kids are in junior school, who else gets to spend all day with 30 other people in the same room? If you consider how quickly nits and chickenpox can spread, all right, if you think actually, what can these kids of ours do in their schools and in their classes? They interact with all of those people on a continuous basis every day. They can just talk about God. I cannot stand in the front of my classroom and talk about God. I can hint, I can ask questions, but our children are the ones who can just share God's love, just totally unrestricted. And then I would also ask you to pray for the students, the other ones, okay, the ones that drop litter in your front garden when they walk past, the ones who forget how to behave appropriately on the bus, those who walk into you because they're on their phone like this and they don't see you coming, all right? I would just encourage you to pray for them. Every day on my way to work, I work in a local secondary school. I turn the corner and I go up the hill. And as I go up that hill, every morning for the past 7 years, I have prayed that God would pour out his Spirit on my school, on my students, on the staff that I work with every day. And I would ask that you would also pray for your local schools, okay, that they are full of people. There's nearly 1,200 people in my school. They need Jesus and they need God's love and they need you to pray for them. Okay, point 3. This whole series is going against the flow, all right? And if Paul talks about, doesn't he, being transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good, acceptable, and perfect. Not what is okay, what will do, and what isn't too bad. It's what is good, acceptable, and perfect. Okay, so as I said, my boys have gone to university, and so we've ticked that box. We managed to navigate the teenage years, I think, okay. They might disagree. But I was thinking back to nearly 22 years ago where our firstborn was born, and so in the hospital, and Trev comes to take us home, and we pop him in the car seat, and we strap him up and we click, and then we check we've clicked, and then he's carried very carefully to the car, and then they're strapped in, and then you check, you strap them in, and they're safe, and then you drive home really carefully, and then as they get bigger, we remembered to cut their grapes in half so they didn't choke. And we used to try and make sure their shoes fitted. We also tried to make sure we got them on the right feet. And, we made sure they cleaned their teeth. So they had good oral hygiene. Yeah. Now, as Ben was saying, children learn all the time. And their brains are kind of very busy. And it turns out, between the ages of 9 and 15, children's brains are very, very sensitive. And the habits that they learn between the ages of 9 and 15 stick. They stay with them for life. And therefore, it's a really important age. In the UK, the ages of 9 to 15 is also the age when most children get a smartphone. And they are genius inventions, aren't they? They keep our children quiet, they can connect with their friends, they can learn new skills. I mean, YouTube's amazing. They can do homework, they can revise, they can manage their money, they can get on a bus, they're on a train, they know which platform. And we can also track them if we want. And we probably, as responsible parents, I think we thought about this. And we thought about, actually, yeah, it's good for our kids. We can set controls, can't we? We can set time limits. We can teach our kids about e-safety. And we can have conversations with them. And we can make sure they're okay. However, within schools, and this is all schools, the fastest growing concern amongst students is the increase in cases of anxiety. And research has discovered a strong correlation between the rise of the smartphone and the rise of anxiety amongst children. And as our children get smartphones and the ages that it's happening is getting lower and lower, levels of anxiety in children are getting higher and higher. Our children are not gaining the social skills they need to flourish in school and then to flourish later on in life. And without meaning to, we are all daily exposing our kids to a world controlled by likes and views and clicks and comments and algorithms. Our children have signed up for apps with false dates of birth, and we've not stopped them. We've gone from being these parents that strap our children in and cut the grapes in half to actually allowing others completely free access to our children with their warped and misguided views of God's creation. Ben mentioned, was talking about that, the amount of time spent on phones actually is unbelievable. And I was going to say, if you're interested, you could Google it. Just slightly hypocritical. But I've picked out a few statistics which scare me, okay? Scare me as a parent, scare me as a teacher, and scare me as a child of God. As a teacher, I'm obviously concerned by the statistic that children who spend 5 to 7 hours on a digital device are about 2 school years behind children who use a device for less than an hour a day. All right? We know that, as Ben said, when children leave school, what has happened in school plays a massive part of what happens next. Okay, there are some more. These are the ones I guess I'm more concerned about just as a human being. Depression, feelings of aggression, suicidal thoughts, low self-confidence, poor self-image, detachment, and weak relationships increase for every year younger a child is given a smartphone, even in those with no traumatic or adverse childhood experience. Since 2012, loneliness in children has doubled. When at home, and home has always been the safe place, you get in, you shut the door, and it's good. No longer. 84% of bullying to children who own smartphones happens on their phones when they are at home. They are not safe. 80% of teenage girls are being put under pressure to provide sexual images of themselves. 51% of 11 to 13-year-olds, so 11 is year 6, so year 6, 7 and 8, say, so 51% say they have seen pornography online. 90% of girls and 50% of boys say they and their peers are sent explicit pictures or videos of things they do not want to see. And yet we strapped them in, didn't we? And we cut up their grapes and we looked after their feet and their teeth. And yet we are letting this happen. So, what can we do about it? No problem is unsolvable, especially with God. Firstly, really importantly, If you're sitting there thinking, oh my goodness, what have I done? We've all done it. Don't worry. It is not your fault. This is something that has crept up on all of us. When Apple released the smartphone, most of us were a little bit like, oh, I don't need one of them. It's fine, they're way too expensive. I'm not going there. And then when you look, 15 or however many years, most of us have gone there, haven't we? Without actually having a clue of the consequences. So, very simply, the easiest thing to do, isn't it, is to start looking at ourselves. Do we use our phones in ways that honour God? Okay, are we addicted? What kind of example do we set our children? Do we set the example that actually it's okay to be on our phone? That's what grown-ups do. That's what I'm going to do. On my phone, I did try to be good. I set 15-minute limits on all the kind of social apps and the news and Pinterest for planning things. But that's fine. 15 minutes, your time is up. Would you like 10 more minutes, or would you like to override it? Okay. I'm also lazy. I never bring my Bible to church. I could pop it in a bag, I could put my glasses in a bag, and I could bring my bag to church. But I tell myself it's okay. I'm going to bring my phone. I'm going to sit in the preach with my phone out and the phone on, which I do most of the time. I am hypocritical. At school, I run an Instagram account for geography, and I encourage my students to follow it. I want them to do well at school, and I am judged on how well they do. Okay, so I think looking at ourselves is more important than kind of judging our children. There's a very simple solution if you've got little children, and that is just decide, actually, we're going to seriously think about whether we think smartphones are the way forward. And when they're little, you can start talking about it. And then when they get bigger, and they are old enough, it's something that's already been talked about. But the reality is, isn't it, if your children already have smartphones, there is no easy solution. Fortunately, God can do anything. Going against the flow is hard. Okay, it is costly. It is difficult. And at times, it is scary. But our children deserve our absolute best shot. Okay, they deserve us to pay a price. We are responsible adults. Everything we do, children see. They copy us, they mimic us. We need to be so careful in how we act, because actually we are displaying God's love and God's character to them. I suppose to sum up, I would just say the most important thing you can do is to pray. Pray for our children. Pray for the 20,000 children in our towns who, life is tough as a kid, but life has got more tough due to technology. It has not made their lives easier. Pray for teachers. Pray for parents. Pray for the leaders of our youth and kids. That what they do is so crucial. But as with all those contributions we've heard this morning, God is good. God is so interested in all of the tiny, tiny details. And he does have it all under control. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. So Proverbs 22. Train up a child in the way they should go, and when they're older, they will not depart from it. When you become a Christian, you get the joy of being in this extended family. And there's a famous African proverb which says, actually, it takes a village to raise a child. And so as parents here today, as uncles, as aunts, as granddads, grandmas, youth leaders, mentors, we are entrusted with shaping the next generation's hearts. And the Bible calls us then to consider those outside our biological family as also our children. In fact, in Matthew's Gospel, verse 12, Jesus broadens our understanding of who our family is beyond our mothers and brothers, but actually to the wider family of God. And so I also want to point us to other things that are happening. A project that was set up by Kings, and you may have seen it through there, over there on the board, is in Cozy Kids. What this does is it provides very poor pupils, or very poor young people from Zimbabwe, an opportunity to have an education. And the picture of the young lady is a lady called Tendai, and she was one of the graduates recently from Nkosi Kids. And she now gives back into the work that's going on for Nkosi. And as a church then, we've got individuals in here who kind of monthly give money. They're not related biologically to any of these young people, but they actually see a need, and they're trying to be generous in the kingdom. Close to home, we've also got other opportunities. There's a fantastic charity called Transforming Lives for Good, and they go into local schools, and they've got a volunteer program which has great impacts on our young people. And I want to invite Karen to come up, and she's going to share a little bit about the work of TLG. Let's give her a round of applause.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Yeah. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Transforming Lives for Good and their early intervention program. So it's a Christian education charity, and the charity partners with local churches up and down the country to help meet the needs of children and young people struggling with their emotional well-being within a school setting. These children may be suffering bereavement, struggling with learning difficulties. They may be anxious or withdrawn, or have low self-esteem, or chronic illness, or have even been excluded from school for a short period of time. So TLG trains and resources the volunteers, the coaches, from within the church to go into primary school settings for 1 hour, once a week, to coach their allocated child. In that hour, the coach provides a safe space for their coached child to build connection, play, and to explore their emotions. Through the early intervention program, churches, schools, and families are seeing children becoming more confident and enthusiastic about school and their future. And the fantastic news is that TLG early intervention is up and running at King's Church, with great thanks to Sophie and Maggie, who have been running it in the last year. So we've been going a year with 3 coaches, working with 3 children in 1 primary school. In September, we'll be working in 2 primary schools, local, and they're all very local to here. The ministry is starting to grow, and we are looking for more volunteer coaches. This ministry not only cares for the child, but the whole family, offering updates on the coaching and invitations to Sunday morning services, like at Christmas, for example, or Easter. And we usually have an end-of-year celebration at the church too. And as well as that, each child and their family are offered an adventure weekend to grow together and have lots of fun and hear about God. So I've been working with early intervention for 6 years as a coach, and I'm always amazed at the progress of the coached children over the course of that year by having one-to-one coaching. And I can honestly say it's the highlight of my week when I go in to see my coached child, because not only are we learning, we're also having lots of fun too, and there's lots of laughter, and there's a real solid relationship built. Early intervention is a very special, unique ministry. It goes against the flow because it's looking to support vulnerable children and their families, rather than overlooking children who just need some help navigating their emotions within a complex world we live in, giving them a hope and a future. If you feel you would like to prayerfully consider becoming a coach or supporting us in prayer, please see me afterwards. I'm just going to be at the back with my daughter for any questions or anyone who's interested in this very special type of ministry. You're now going to watch a video about what some of the coaches say about their experiences of coaching. Thank you.
We're aware that children in our local community struggle for so many different reasons.
We thought this is something that would make such a huge difference.
By going in and encouraging kids, spending time with them on a one-to-one.
Just the opportunity to see our church do fruitful, active work.
Show the love of Jesus to people in a really practical way.
That child has 1 hour a week where all the attention is on them.
You see just massive change in that 1 year.
You get to play fun games, you get to make interesting things, you get to have a laugh.
And when I came out of that session, boy, was I filled with joy.
Building a trusting relationship with the child.
It is just listening to them.
Share with you perhaps things that they don't share with other adults.
God is so much in this.
We can either just look on and be bystanders, or we can actually take part in trying to change lives for good.
Could I do it? Could I do it? The answer is yes, you can.
Give it a go. I mean, an hour a week to you probably doesn't mean that much, but to the child you could be coaching, that could change their life.
It's just a wonderful hour a week, and I would just say go for it.
Why didn't I know about TLG earlier?
Simply go for it.
Go for it.
Go for it.
Active in that. And as a church, we're just full of ordinary people, but who can do extraordinary opportunities to make a difference in people around us. Proverbs is really clear then that we need to train and be intentional about changing up the next generation in the way of righteousness so they walk with God throughout their lives. As Rachel touched on, it can seem vast, the problems around us. Young people are facing a mental health epidemic, and schools and homes are struggling to cope. However, this morning, we've heard the difference that a committed individual can make in their lives by either parenting intentionally, volunteering their time, or having meaningful conversations, and of course, giving and praying for them. And whilst it's true, teenagers are most influenced by culture and those around them, they are also strongly influenced by you. And so continue to have meaningful conversations with your young people. So friends, this morning, we've given you a few practical considerations. Let's go against the flow for our families, for our children, and for the future of education. It's been said that scriptures were not just given to make our individual lives better, but they were given so that we could shine as a body for hope for our communities. So we're visitors here all the time. Next week, a mum might show up and she's desperate for her children to engage in the kids' work. Maybe that her husband would connect in some way. And you and I have the opportunity to be an answer to that prayer. How about being a significant other in somebody's life? A sponsor or a mentor? Imagine as a church if we committed to teach and train the next generation so they could walk for the rest of their life following God. I want you to consider that this morning. In a second, we're going to invite the band just back up. And I just want us to think about how we might respond to what we've heard today. If you'd consider finding out a bit more about TLG or in Cozy, then there's an opportunity at the back before you go out the double doors there, just to chat with Karen, with Mattia from Cozy, but also Kate, who heads up the children's ministry here. And you can find out a bit more about maybe volunteering your time. For some of you, it might be actually you just value somebody staying with you in prayer. Maybe your role as a parent, or maybe actually thinking about childhood and education. Actually, it's raised some areas in you that you'd like someone to stand with you and pray for. And so during the worship, I'd just like you to come to the side over there, and there'll be a group of people with their lanyards on, prayer lanyards, and they'd be willing to stand with you and to listen to you and pray with you. Finally, I was in a shop yesterday, and I noticed a slogan on the shop on the side. It said, actually, by 2025, we're going to give 1% of our profits away. And part of me was astounded that it was just so low, 1%. And I thought, actually, as a church, I don't want to, as an individual, I don't want to give 1% of my time away. And I'm called to be generous because of this lavish love that God has given us. So let's be generous and let's just reflect on what we've heard this morning as we think about going into our summers as well. Thank you, everybody.